Alright, so we have a first look at the World Tier 5 difficulty coming up to Diablo 4. Well, I guess sometimes in the future we have a pretty awesome data mine from the past 24 hours that seems to indicate Blizzard is currently working on a new difficulty level. And not just that, we have a first look at some of the endgame items to expect with it, and also some of the seasonal changes coming along. Of course, do take all of this with a huge grain of salt, because we don't know when and if Blizzard even ends up implementing these, though there are some strong chances that that is going to happen. And by the way, huge shout out to Datamine ARPG over on Twitter, as this was the same user that also told us about some of the end game gems coming in hopefully a future update. But it's been actually data mined from the current game files that this is how World Tier 5 looks like. Obviously, it does seem legit, and I'm inclined to believe that Blizzard is indeed going to bring this at some point, even though, if I recall, in some of their previous interviews, they did disprove that fact that they aren't working on it. Well, this proves the contrary of that. But while this is all considered speculation, I did find evidence of World Tier 5 the user mentions being in the works, as shown in the image below. This is the actual artwork currently available for Tier 5, but it may not be the final one and could be used for testing purposes only. Unfortunately, the name of the difficulty and the details of the benefits are still unknown. However, it's good to point out that Blizzard never stuck with the same difficulties from launch with any of the previous Diablo games, and in fact added a lot more on top. This was true with Diablo 3 and most recently with Diablo Immortal, so at some point this is bound to happen. There's also a data entry about Kyovashad, I believe, statue, also indicating that World Tier 5 change, which probably is something we're going to be able to do once we unlock it. Now let's talk about some of the item changes, and you better save up on those gems, because there are at least 3 new tiers coming in with whatever this update is going to be. So this includes rank 6, 7 and 8, all of which actually provide some really nice stats on top that we're gonna go over in just a little bit. The rank 6 naming is currently unknown, but the data miner was able to find that rank 7 is gonna be called Magnificent, and then rank 8 is called Perfect. Right now we're kind of stopping at, I believe, rank 5, which gives us the Royal quality for the last upgrade you do for these gems. Now there is a graph over here with some of the expected bonuses coming up from these gems, but keep in mind that this is not information available currently in the game's files, but actually just the data miner's conclusion by observing the number of patterns of the previous ranks, which I'm inclined to also agree with. For example, in the case of the Emerald, currently at rank 5, it gives you about a 12% increase to crit damage to vulnerable enemies. At rank 6, it's going to be 13.5, rank 7, 15%, and then rank 8, 16.5. And if it continues like this, by rank 10, I believe it should reach close to 20% if that ever happens. Also, in the case of something like the skulls, if you go with the armor, by rank 8 we're gonna be able to get 380 armor, which I guess makes sense because we're gonna have to fight tougher enemies, so we need higher defenses, higher damage, and so on. So what you're looking at right here is roughly between 1 to 1.5% increase in those specific buffs right there, depending on how much they would previously give. Like, for example, the topaz on the damage reduction, it's 9 at rank 4, 10% at rank 5, and then it continues 11, 12, and 13 by rank 8. However, in the case of something like the skill damage on them, it's actually 2.5%. So this is obviously going to depend on the slot you put them in and what they actually do. This means however many gems you think you have right now, probably they are not enough. We're gonna need 3 to upgrade these to the next level, and then 3 again to the next, and so on until the max. So you better stack on those flawless and then turn them into royal and wait up for the new update, so that once that happens you can immediately progress and maybe even get rank 8 right away and fare better in whatever challenges lay ahead. Now, we do also have some information on the seasons, of course, on top of everything we've known so far, and the fact that there should be one sometimes around the middle of July. We do have some information on how these will actually work like. So the game files provide some additional insight, but it's important to take them with a grain of salt, since they may have been used for testing purposes only and are subject to rework or refinement in the final version. So season, chapters, and challenges. Seasons may also be divided into chapters as indicated by the evidence in the game files showing seasonal chapter reward caches for completion. The same concept applies to challenges, which can be generic, such as reaching a certain level and completing a specific number of objectives out of a total. However, there may also be other challenges exclusive to the season. I believe we've seen some of the stuff released by Blizzard, of course, still kind of like blurred and everything, not showing the full-on information, but I believe that this is still probably going to be in the end version of these seasons, as they are indeed going to have their own chapters with their own kind of like challenge tracks. So if you complete those, they unlock unique rewards and good items that you can use to progress on the characters you create during these seasons. Now, this might change or not, but previously this is what Blizzard has shown us. In terms of the seasonal stash tab, this is actually interesting. So based on the information, there will be seasonal stash tabs. So it's important to know that the items from non-seasonal characters cannot be transferred to a seasonal tab. However, you will be able to withdraw items from it. It is crucial to remember that you just retrieve your items before the active season ends, as any items left within the tab may become unavailable. It's quite interesting to see that we've been playing Diablo 4 for so long and there are so few data mines and like leaks, all things considered. Even the data miner in this case points out that Diablo 4 is more challenging than, for example, Diablo Immortal, which was the previous game he was covering. So yeah, I guess we're gonna also have to wait and see what Blizzard has to say on that. But since we last talked about nerfs and changes, there's been another hotfix which dropped, I believe, 10 hours ago at the time of making this video. And yes, you guessed it, there are more dungeon nerfs. Specifically, they further adjusted the elite monster rates in dungeons without naming any specifics. Though after doing some tests, yes, even Champion's Demise seems to have been affected by this change. Just eyeballing it, it looks like around a 35 to 50% reduction in the number of enemy spawns, which is actually quite significant. It does feel a lot more deserted than before, but still it's one of the most numerous dungeons in terms of the number of enemies you can actually gather at any single moment. Not as efficient as before, of course, too, so it's going to give you even less reasons to not do this on anything other than the Nightmare Dungeon mode. Now, let's also talk about some of the other changes. PvP also gets a number of fixes. So they fixed an issue where PvP damage adjustments would improperly stack with other damage reduction, leading to incorrect expectations against other players. So from the way I'm reading this, it seems that maybe some of the classes that previously felt a bit too tanky will be a lot more squishy after this hotfix update. They've also fixed a number of other issues in there that, yeah, you probably have also encountered, like the curator in the capstone dungeon would disappear with one of its abilities. They've also fixed an issue where the level 100 pinnacle encounter would not progress properly, and they fixed an issue where the capstone boss would not be able to target the player during some encounters. And also a few more for some of the items. They fixed an issue where items would drop in lower world tiers than originally intended. And finally, they further added some stability fixes and improvements. So all in all, it looks like they are indeed trying to squeeze as much of the balance as possible and make everything ready, I guess, for whatever this world tier difficulty and maybe next season that should drop next month, or at the very least sometimes next month. But yeah, this is pretty much it with all the new info. Let me know down below what you think about it. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.